let's go back to where were you born? And did you always want to be a comedian? What was one of your major wants when you were like 9 or 10 years old, emotional wants?
Oh, God, emotional. When I was 9 or 10 years old, my emotional want was for my dad to come back home. But too dark?
Same
we'll
with me.
Yeah. I was born in Germany. So I was a military baby. And we moved to Mississippi, southern Mississippi, when I was 3. My dad got restationed. And then my dad retired a few years later and got into drugs. And then drug addict out of my life. And then my mom drove us from Mississippi to Alaska. So kind of all over the map, really. A bit of a nightmare.
So were you always looking, because my dad was like, had orgy parties in LA and had drugs all over. And, you know, and that's what made me want to be a stand-up comedian. Plus also I had the ADHD. Were you always looking out the window and saying, when is he going to come home? And then do you think that was part of your start of being a stand-up comedian, actually?
Oh, absolutely. Like, for better or worse, I think some of the greatest comedy is born from tragedy, because it's a coping mechanism. At the end of the day, it's like some of us became funny to survive, because when you get hurled up an amount of emotional trauma that you're not able to process, you have to find a way to get through it. And you know, for many comedians, and I think many people, humor is like a life preserver when you're drowning. So yeah, definitely. I didn't know it at the time that my dad leaving was going to affect so many of the relationships I had and the way I interacted with people. But my mom was also a mentally ill alcoholic. So it was just being kind of left to my own devices, more or less, you know? So, you kind of learn to cope in your own ways. I was always a funny kid, or as my mom called me, extremely weird when I was really young. I think I always knew I was funny. When I was 9 or 10, I had just learned about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the Supreme Court, and I thought I would go to Harvard and become a Supreme Court justice.
That's cool.
Yeah. But I would say by high school, I was like, I want to be a comedian.
In Alaska?
Yeah. So I went to elementary school, started middle school in Mississippi, 6th grade. It's middle school in Mississippi. We drove to Alaska. Then I was still in 6th grade. That was back at elementary school. Really felt like a setback personally. I was like, I'm above this. I'm a middle schooler. But yeah, high school in Alaska, which Alaska will make or break you. But miraculously, I didn't get
This
broken.
is the perfect training for you. Germany, Louisiana, Alaska, for you to become a stand-up comedian, because that's what you need to do, is travel, hotel room, whatever, moving, right?
Travel, yes, survive, get to know different types of people. I mean, when you look at the large disparity between, because I've gone back to Germany as an adult, I've gotten to tour there, which has been really cool. Between obviously, you know, individuals are going to be individual, but when you look at like the general sort of personality attitudes of the populations of Germany, Frankfurt, Germany, and Anchorage, Alaska, you couldn't get two more different groups of mostly white people, but like, that's just, you know, what it was. Or like, you know, there's a very diverse population in Alaska. I didn't seem to notice it as much in Germany, but, I mean, there's a much bigger native population. It's so funny how if you only live in one town, it really can shape your frame of reference, and you kind of think this is how the world is. Getting to go to these different cities, you know, Germany's a lot of white people, Mississippi, white and black people. And then I went to Alaska, and it was a lot of natives, there's a lot of like Filipinos and like Polynesian people, which I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have thought that. Although moving to Alaska, I didn't know an Eskimo was an actual group of people. I thought it was people in furry coats. Like I was in 6th grade. I was like, yeah, it's the coat. And I'm like, oh, that's like a race of people. That's like a whole. And by the way, it's like in Alaska, that's not. Some people think that's an offensive term.
Yeah, I just found that out because I did a commercial for our company, and I used an Eskimo toss, and I had a tiny person dress up as an Eskimo. It's a long story. Won't get into it. But somebody said, you know, you can't say Eskimo. We're going to get into that. There's tons of things you can't say now. So That's one of them too.
If you are not of the race that is the thing, first of all, like just shut the fuck up and leave the conversation.
That's your barometer.
And it's like, yes, of course there are things I know I shouldn't say, but like really tired of white people being like, as a white person, I will speak on behalf of these disenfranchised. It's like they'll fucking tell you. Your black friends are gonna at some point be like, don't you dare say that. You know what I mean?
Right. Enter at your own peril.
And it's